Queen's Landing for House of the Dragon. We have, basically, Rhaenyra claiming the Iron Throne. Her goal for 3 seasons now. Here's the one thing that I've actually noticed that a few people are asking the question of. And not just people who watch the show, but also book readers and even fans on both sides. Why didn't the Greens replace the Gold Cloaks? I mean, it makes sense. You would think they would.
Stop the cap.
That's the funny thing. They really couldn't. But why is that? I mean, sure, they had King's Landing. They had soldiers all over the place. They had the money to do so. But why keep them there since they work for Daemon Targaryen? I mean, hell, there was a group of them willing to straight up fight against the Iron Throne for the sake of Daemon before the Dance of the Dragons ever began.
Your occupation of this island is at an end. You're to relinquish the dragon's egg, disband your army, banish your whore, and leave Dragonstone.
So why wouldn't they get rid of them? Well, that's where things get interesting. Because we have to understand precisely who the Gold Cloaks are, why they are so loyal to Daemon Targaryen, and the logistical infeasibility to actually replace them during that point in time. So then, who are the Gold Cloaks? Well, they're not called the Gold Cloaks. At least, they are called that now. Originally, they were just called the City Watch of King's Landing. And, well, they were created by Maegor the Cruel. Yeah, the insane guy that Otto Hightower thought Daemon was going to become because he doesn't like him all that much. Yeah, makes sense, huh? So, they were founded as a motley crew of criminals given badges to release other criminals. It's, ironically enough, very much like the Thousand Year Blood War arc and how the first captains of Gote 13 were actually criminals. So, ever since that time, they were neglected by everyone. Not just after Maegor's death, but every king that came after him, including Jaehaerys, which is interesting. The Conciliator basically just kept them chronically underfunded, and that's mainly because infrastructure projects that were needed for Westeros, they just drained the treasury. So it makes sense why you can't fully fund a 2,000-man army. That's basically what they are, and it's a very expensive endeavor, especially when you have so many other projects going on at the same time that had to be done. And Jaehaerys was known to be doing a lot of stuff. Along with having a lot of family issues when it comes to his daughters, like, for Pete's sake, the guy is unlucky as hell. Now, during Jaehaerys' time, the Gold Cloaks were actually under the command of Good Queen Alysanne herself, which, okay, pretty good. She treated them well. Just a bit of a problem, though. They're still underfunded. I mean, it reached the point during Jaehaerys' reign that when the Shivers finally came, this terrible disease, the underfunded and undertrained guards of the City Watch just basically abandoned their post and left the capital to descend into pure anarchy. Now, I don't know about you, but how many people are going to stay in that type of situation, being underpaid, underfunded, and having to deal with a population of 500,000 people? Well, at the time, King's Landing didn't have that many people, more than likely. That's still ridiculous. I wouldn't be putting up with it. I wouldn't put up with it at all. And as the Shivers show, these guys had a breaking point, and I don't blame them. So then, why did they go from being this rabble to the Gold Cloaks that we see in House of the Dragon, and later on, this Grey Tower in the War of the Five Kings? Well, for the latter, corruption. That's all you can say. It's just freaking corruption. Again, with neglect and corruption. That's really it. But how they became the way they are in House of the Dragon is actually pretty interesting. Okay, so we know that when it comes right down to it, Otto Hightower is scared of Daemon Targaryen. I don't blame him. The guy is nuts, but Viserys didn't want his brother to be exiled or sent away or, killed, so he decided to send him to the City Watch. After all, they were chronically underfunded, underpaid, and frankly enough, they were untrained as well. So it didn't seem like that much of an issue. It didn't seem that dangerous. It was basically a minor exile for Daemon. Rather than being made hand. Thank you, Otto Hightower. Now, here's the thing though. Daemon saw in them the potential of what they could be, and holy hell did he get to work.
You done goofed.
He didn't treat them as low-born criminals or rabble. He treated them as an army in waiting, a brotherhood built to secure the city from threats both within and without. He ensured that they got quality training, quality armor. Heck, the reason why they're even called the Gold Cloaks is not because of the idea that they are loyal to whoever pays them. It's because of the Gold Cloaks that Daemon Targaryen gave them. What he gave them was identity, purpose, pride, and status.
When I took command of the watch, you were stray mongrels. Starving and undisciplined. Now, you're a pack of hounds, sated and honed for the hunt. My brother's city has fallen into squalor. Crime of every breed has been allowed to thrive. No longer. Beginning tonight, King's Landing will learn to fear the color gold.
He took a generation of outcasts and made them into an army the Iron Throne could only be proud to have. Let's take something into consideration here. Maegor's idea wasn't a bad one when it came to wanting to have a police force. You want the criminals to be the ones policing because they know all the tricks. That's the main point. Unfortunately, when they don't have funding, they don't have money, don't have anything, you can't really expect them to do the job all that well, now can you? But that's where Daemon came in. As a result, it inspired such a massive amount of loyalty in them. They were willing to fight the gosh damn Iron Throne for Daemon. Hello? Massive problem here. So, with that idea, it gets back to the question of why didn't the Greens get rid of them? Okay, one, they're kind of buying their own press. They believe that Daemon couldn't even inspire loyalty in Iraq, which, given some of the things he did, I don't blame them for thinking that. It's not entirely off the cuff. But at the same time, it was what made them fall victim to this whole takeover. In the Queen's Landing episode, they fell to that propaganda. But not only that, logistically, it's infeasible. Now here's the thing, in the books, they actually did try to mitigate this situation a bit. Due to them not believing that Daemon had any type of charisma, any true legacy or connection or bond or loyalty to the Gold Cloaks and vice versa. They thought that replacing commanders would be enough, with Sir Luther being replaced by Gawain Hightower. Again, this is in the books, so it makes sense. They thought that the Gold Cloaks would be loyal to whoever gave them the coin to keep on living and continue doing the job, which again is not an unreasonable thought process when you think of it. But unfortunately, that's not how loyalty works. So yeah, talk about miscalculation. Not only that, but something that I've heard a little bit is that Daemon in the books was secretly funding them. Oh no, he wasn't. If this was the case, why didn't they replace them? Well, while the Greens had control over the finances and the treasury of King's Landing, they didn't have the time. Let's be fair, the Dance of the Dragons took place, like, what, over the course of 2 years? And even then, despite the fact that the Greens had more or less total control over King's Landing prior to Viserys' death, there was no reason for them to suspect the Gold Cloaks would actually rebel against them. But we're gonna go over the reasons as to why they couldn't, because logistically, the feasibility of doing so wasn't possible. The first one is that the Greens intelligently, very smartly, moved the gold from King's Landing, physically getting it out and leaving only enough necessary for the war costs and, you know, the most basic pay for the Gold Cloaks. And this was done early on in the war. So that way, if they lose King's Landing, Rhaenyra wouldn't have the money in order to stay going. A very clever trap. But let's say they did have that. Given the situation, the Crown Lands can bring up to about, well, I think 15,000 people by the time of Game of Thrones. So around this time, maybe about 10,000, maybe a bit less. Okay, so if that's the case, you recruiting and rearming 2,000 soldiers from the various houses that are nearby King's Landing would require immediate massive liquid capital, and even then you would have to train these guys. That's kind of a bit of a problem. You see, city policing requires local knowledge, something that the Gold Cloaks have had for over 100 years and made even more effective with Daemon being in charge. It makes perfect sense as to why they were kept around, because no one else could do this. You can't just bring in 2,000 soldiers from the countryside and be like, hey, you're gonna be keeping an eye on the city. I understand, it's brand new, get used to it, you'll figure it out. mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. And even then, Fleet Bomb is a labyrinth in and of itself. It is incredibly difficult in order to navigate on a normal day, let alone a war where people are starving. They would have been completely ineffective against the criminal underworld. And yes, you could always have it that maybe 500 of these guys stayed in order to train up the new recruits. It really wouldn't matter, because if you have 500 who stay and you send the other 1500 out in order to fight and be killed on the battlefield, so that way they can't be there in King's Landing, the issue is that those 500 will sabotage the brand new people you brought in. Even if they're commanders, the commanders themselves are not used to watching over a city. I mean, maybe if it got some from Lannisport, you could, but not from the local area of the Crown Lands. It wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, that'd just be very bad. And not only that, you'd have to pull 2,000 recruits from the nearby areas. Even if you didn't take them from Kristen Cole's army that he was using in order to secure the Crown Lands, that's still taking reserve forces away that could be utilized just to reinforce the city alone. Like, instead of having 2,000 soldiers that are present, have 4,000 soldiers, and that 2,000 you brought in can shadow the Gold Cloaks, making sure that their loyalty remains intact while continuing to understand how the city works. Maybe that could work, but the problem is that would take too long. And let's be fair here, we all know what happens when Rhaenyra takes the city. Or if you don't, you're about to find out. It's a bad day for everyone. But you see, that's why they turned. That's why this brotherhood of warriors basically told the Greens to go kick rocks. The Gold Cloaks are the one army that could probably take King's Landing because they're already inside. But they couldn't take it with Vhagar there. They couldn't take it with Sunfire there. At this current moment, when they took the city, there were no dragons. There was no one around that could oppose the Blacks. There's why they couldn't replace them. Logistically, infeasible. Timing-wise, impossible. Money-wise, hey look, they literally moved the money. And while the Greens in the show are not as egregious as the ones in the books, they couldn't do anything. It doesn't matter if you had Otto Hightower there. It doesn't matter if you had 20 years to figure things out. You could not replace them effectively. Not in a short amount of time, and not without it being remarkably suspicious. And it would be. So, let me ask you guys a question. If you were there, if you were the Greens, and you knew the City Watch was loyal to Daemon, that has shown that they were more than willing to fight for him against the Iron Throne when there were dragons around, and dragon riders, such as, Seasmoke and Laenor, Rhaenys and Meleys, Rhaenyra and Syrax, what would you have done in their situation? How would you dealt with the Gold Cloaks? Because if you ask me, I'd say nothing. Because the victory at King's Landing that Rhaenyra has just struck, it really does just cause so many problems. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.